Darkness swallowed the ship. No lights, no instruments, no horizon. Only the groaning of metal under stress and the uneven breaths of the crew. Cullen's voice cut through the dark, tight with fear.
If we don't get power back in the next 30 seconds...
He didn't finish. Trevor clung to the dead console, heart hammering. He couldn't see, couldn't think, only fall. Then, something flickered at the edge of his awareness. Not light, not sound. Something else. A shape. A mark. A symbol. Floating in the darkness outside the cockpit windows, as if painted onto the night itself. Daniel saw it. Not with eyes. With something deeper. A surge of will rose inside him, raw, instinctive, desperate. Trevor's body jerked. It started to fumble its way in the darkness toward the pilot's seat and Cullen. His hands moved, but they weren't his. Cullen noticed first.
Harry? Harry, what are you doing?
Trevor tried to answer, but no sound came. He was trapped behind his own eyes, watching his hands glide across the dead controls as if guided by invisible strings. Daniel pushed harder. Evangelina tilted, falling into a new angle, toward the symbol.
We're going to hit the ground!
Harry, stop! Stop!
Trevor's breath caught. He could feel Daniel inside him, not as a voice, but as a force. The symbol grew larger, brighter, closer. And Evangelina plunged straight into it. A soundless impact. Like slipping through water, like falling through a dream. Then, light. The displays flickered back to life, the engines coughed, the navigation screens filled with data. The ship steadied itself. Cullen stared at the instruments, stunned.
Systems? Coming back online?
Pamela collapsed into her seat, breath shaking.
What the hell was that?
Ben turned slowly toward Trevor.
Harry.
Trevor crouched where he was, frozen, eyes wide, chest rising and falling too fast.
Harry, what just happened?
Trevor shook his head, barely able to form the words.
I have no idea.
Inside him, Daniel retreated, exhausted, shaken, but aware he had done something impossible. Trevor stumbled back to his seat. He pressed a trembling hand to his forehead, trying to steady his breath.
This is stress, that's all. Years of undercover work, too many close calls. You're finally cracking, old chap.
But the echo pulsed again, stronger this time. Trevor's breath caught. He wasn't alone in his own head. Amanda sat at her kitchen table, the room dim except for the soft glow of a single lamp. From the living room came the muffled sound of a football match, James's way of keeping himself occupied when the house felt too heavy. He didn't understand what Amanda was going through, not really, but he stayed close in the only way he knew how. Eric sat across from her, jacket still on from work. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were gentle. She closed her eyes and reached inward again, searching for Daniel's echo. It came, but weaker than before. A thin thread, a fading whisper stretched across an impossible distance. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing.
You're still there. I know you are.
Amanda, you can't keep doing this to yourself.
She opened her eyes, meeting his.
I can't stop. Not while he's still fighting.
What if the doctors are right? What if?
No.
Her voice cut through the room like a blade.
They don't know what's happening. They can't feel what I feel.
She leaned back, staring at the ceiling as if searching for answers there.
The Union doesn't know what happened. That's the only reason I'm still alive. And it's the only reason Daniel still has a chance.
Eric didn't argue. He knew better by now. Amanda closed her eyes again, reaching for the echo. It flickered, then dimmed, then faded almost completely. A cold weight settled in her chest. Something had changed. Something had pulled Daniel further away. Evangelina drifted low over the treetops, the engine still sounding uneven after the blackout. Morning light cut through the fog in thin, pale beams. Outpost 12 emerged slowly beneath them, a scattering of platforms and metal structures pressed into the forest like an afterthought. Trevor sat rigid in his seat, hands clasped tightly together. He kept replaying the moment in the cockpit, the darkness, the symbol, the feeling of his own body moving without him. His pulse hadn't settled since. Cullen adjusted the controls with a stiffness Trevor had never seen in him.
Let's just get her on the ground.
Pamela didn't look away from the window.
And then we're talking about what the hell that was.
Ben didn't speak. He watched Trevor instead. Not openly, but with the quiet, calculating attention of someone trying to solve a puzzle. Trevor avoided his eyes. Inside him, Daniel was quiet, but not gone. Evangelina touched down as the pale morning fog drifted across the landing pad. Workers moved between crates and machinery, their movements hurried and tense. Trevor stepped onto the landing pad, legs unsteady. The air was cold and damp, carrying the scent of pine and something metallic he couldn't place. And then he saw him. The handler, standing perfectly still near the edge of the platform, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the ship as if he had been waiting for them. Ben muttering under his breath,
He's here again.
Trevor felt a cold shiver crawl up his spine. Daniel felt something else. A warning, sharp and instinctive. The handler's gaze lingered on Trevor a moment too long. The handler approached with the same controlled, unsettling calm he had shown in Harbor City. His escorts followed a step behind, silent and watchful.
You arrived later than expected.
Cullen forced a steady tone.
We had complications.
I'm sure.
His eyes moved across the crew and stopped on Trevor. Trevor felt the weight of that gaze like a hand pressing against his chest. Daniel recoiled inside him, as if trying to hide.
We will speak later.
He turned and walked away. Ben watched him go, jaw tight.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, no kidding.
Trevor didn't answer. His hands were shaking again. Trevor walked along the tree line, trying to steady his breath. The forest was dense and silent, the mist curling between the trunks like pale smoke. Every sound, every shift of wind, every creak of branches felt amplified, as if the world were listening. He pressed a hand to his chest, fingers trembling. Inside him, Daniel stirred, faint, uneasy. Trevor swallowed hard. He had spent years lying to himself, to others, to anyone who needed a convincing story. But this was different. There was no lie that could cover what had happened in the cockpit. No trick of the mind that could explain the feeling of his own hands moving without him.
You're finally cracking. Yeah. Bloody hell. This is it, isn't it?
But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. This wasn't stress. This wasn't years of undercover work catching up with him. This was something else. Something inside him that didn't belong to him. Daniel pulsed again, a soft, involuntary echo that wasn't his own heartbeat. Trevor stopped walking. His breath hitched. He wasn't imagining it. He wasn't misreading it. He wasn't cracking. Someone else was in there with him. Someone who could move his body. Someone who could take control. Someone who had already done it. Trevor's throat tightened. He wasn't sure which feeling scared him more, Daniel's presence or the moments when Daniel went quiet. He forced himself to keep walking, but every step felt like he was moving deeper into someone else's dream. Day has become night. Cullen and Pamela walked ahead, carrying a small crate between them. The outpost commander had insisted it be delivered to the storage depot immediately, his voice trembling just enough for Trevor to notice. Ben followed a few steps behind, scanning the shadows with the quiet intensity of a man who trusted his instincts more than any official report. Trevor trailed at the back, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. The night air was cold and damp, carrying the scent of pine and wet soil. The forest pressed close on both sides of the narrow road, branches arching overhead like skeletal fingers. The outpost was quiet. Too quiet. No chatter, no machinery, no music leaking from the bars or dormitories, just the wind and the distant hum of generators. Pamela glanced back.
You okay back there?
Trevor forced a nod.
Just tired.
Ben slowed until he walked beside him.
You sure? You look like you've seen a ghost.
Trevor swallowed.
Just adjusting to the place.
Ben didn't look convinced. His eyes lingered on Trevor a moment longer before he turned away. Trevor exhaled shakily. Inside him, Daniel felt the forest too. The density of it, the stillness, the way the world seemed to hold its breath. It pressed against him like a memory he couldn't place. Trevor shivered. Something about this place felt wrong. The storage depot was a squat metal building at the edge of the settlement, half buried in the hillside. A single floodlight flickered above the entrance, casting long shadows across the gravel. The outpost commander waited by the door, wringing his hands. His eyes flicked nervously toward the handler, who stood on the other side of the yard, speaking quietly with one of his escorts.
Thank you for bringing this. We appreciate your cooperation.
Cullen set the crate down with a grunt.
Just doing our job.
The handler didn't look at them. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to keep everyone on edge. Ben stepped closer to the commander, lowering his voice.
You all right, sir?
The commander flinched.
Yes, of course. Just busy night.
But his eyes kept darting toward the handler, as if afraid the man might overhear even from across the clearing. Trevor felt the pressure behind his eyes spike again, sharp, disorienting. He staggered, catching himself on the wall. The commander noticed. His expression tightened.
You should all return to your ship. It's safer there.
Cullen frowned.
Safer? From what?
The commander hesitated, glancing once more at the handler.
From the things that move in the trees.
Trevor's blood ran cold. He didn't know why. Trevor walked alone along the narrow path leading back toward the landing pad. The others had gone ahead, their voices fading into the distance. He needed a moment to breathe, to clear the static in his head. The forest pressed close on both sides, dense and silent. Mist curled around the tree trunks like pale smoke. The only sound was the crunch of gravel beneath his boots. He rubbed his temples, trying to steady his thoughts. The pressure behind his eyes pulsed again, sharp, insistent. He stopped. Something moved in the corner of his vision. A shape, a silhouette, standing between the trees. Trevor's breath caught. He turned slowly, heart hammering. For a moment, he saw nothing but darkness. Then the figure stepped into view. Tall, still, featureless in the dim light. Trevor froze, his muscles locked, his breath stalled in his throat. It felt as if the world narrowed to a single point, the figure's gaze fixed on him with impossible intensity. A sensation washed over him, cold and invasive, like being scanned from the inside out. Every thought, every memory, every fear laid bare. Trevor tried to move, to speak, to blink. He couldn't. Inside him, Daniel reacted. A sudden surge of instinct, a flare of alarm that wasn't entirely human. The echo rippled through Trevor's mind like a shock wave. The figure tilted its head. Trevor's knees buckled. He caught himself against a tree, gasping as sensation returned to his limbs. When he looked up again, the figure was gone. The forest was silent. Trevor staggered backward, chest tight, breath ragged. Whatever had just looked at him, it hadn't been human.
Meanwhile, somewhere else. A glass-walled lab, rows of monitors, the soft hum of machines analyzing data streams from distant worlds. A technician leaned over a console, eyes narrowing as new readings stabilized on the screen. 3 distinct signatures pulsed in a slow, rhythmic pattern. A living host, a dead imprint, and something embryonic. Faint, but unmistakably alive.
We have a clean reading.
A superior stepped closer, hands clasped behind his back.
Show me.
The technician expanded the waveform. The embryonic signature flickered, unstable but present.
This isn't a residue. It's a host. A living host.
The superior studied the data for a long moment.
Continue monitoring. We act when we're certain.
The technician hesitated.
Sir, if this is what it appears to be...
Not yet. We cannot afford a mistake.
The screen flickered again. 3 signatures, 1 body. Something impossible. Trevor jolted awake, drenched in sweat. His heart pounded against his ribs like it was trying to escape. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. Forest, cockpit, darkness. Everything blurred together. He sat up slowly, breath shaking. The room was dim, lit only by the faint emergency strip along the floor. Shadows stretched across the walls, long and uneven. He swung his legs over the edge of the bunk. Then he froze. Someone stood in the doorway. A silhouette. Still. Silent. Trevor's breath caught. He couldn't move. Couldn't speak. The figure didn't step forward. It didn't retreat. It simply watched him, or looked through him, with the same impossible stillness as the one in the forest. Inside him, Daniel surged again, a protective instinct, raw and instinctive, like a spark in the dark. The figure tilted its head. Trevor's vision blurred. His pulse roared in his ears. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure stepped back into the shadows and vanished. Trevor sat trembling in the half-dark, hands gripping the edge of the bunk.